Yeah, my video sucks. Don't give a fuck. Best video I ever seen. That all lives matter.
And you were not able to address other cases. I wanted to ask you whether or not you were familiar with a few other cases. Sandy Rogers and Scotty Richardson from Aiken, South Carolina. You familiar with that case?
No, sir.
How about Roger Dale Rice from Lauren, South Carolina? You familiar with that case?
No, sir.
Eric Nicholson or Marcus Whitfield from Greenville, South Carolina. You familiar with that case?
No, sir.
Russ Sorrow from Greenville, South Carolina.
No, sir.
Or Kevin Carper from Spartanburg, South Carolina.
No, sir.
Professor, those are just a handful of the more than 340 police officers who were killed in the line of duty in South Carolina. And Kevin Carper's case is most instructive because his partner did CPR on the suspect that killed Kevin, trying to save his life. Let me ask it another way. Are you familiar with the case of Ricky Samuel?
No, sir.
How about Tamika Houston?
No, sir.
How about Nell Lindsay?
No, sir.
Miranda All?
No, sir.
Santiago Rios?
No, sir.
Those are all folks that were the victim of intra-racial homicides in South Carolina. And I hasten to add, there were not protests either with any of those police officer killings or any of the intra-racial killings. And I suspect you agree with me, Professor, that all lives matter, whether you're killed
All
by a
lives
police
matter.
officer or your next door neighbor. You're every bit as dead, aren't you?
Every bit is dead.
Yes,
All
sir.
fucking lives matter.
I actually, as a former prosecutor and someone who's worked with police officers, have the deepest respect for them.
So do I, and despite that deep respect, Professor, I still maintain the objectivity of prosecuting police officers who engaged in misconduct. We have a process
Prosecute
in place.
them
If you don't think
motherfucking police
you can be
officers
fair, it's called
who were in
recusal,
bullshit.
which is what some of us did in every single one of our officer-involved shootings. We recused it to another prosecutor so he or she could make that decision. So there is a process in place. You called for a process. There is one. It's called recusal. Do you know, as a former prosecutor, or can you deign what may have been the biggest impediment to our being able to successfully prosecute homicide cases, particularly homicide cases involving victims of color, in my criminal justice jurisdiction? Do you know what the biggest impediment was?
In Massachusetts, one of the biggest impediments is trying to get witnesses to come forward.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. You have a victim of color, and we had trouble getting witnesses to cooperate with law enforcement and prosecutors, which then, as you know, diminishes the quality of that case and your ability to prosecute it, which may result in a lesser plea bargain because you don't have the facts, which may then result in what you said in your opening statement, which is people have a tendency to treat black lives differently than white, when the reality is the case wasn't quite as good. Isn't that a possibility too?
For every prosecutor who's out there, this is a serious problem, and you are correct in pointing that out, sir.
Right, and it wasn't just me pointing it out, Professor. I happen to have a fantastic chief of police when I was the DA. Fantastic man by the name of Tony Fisher, who happened to be an African-American chief of police. And he lamented the